Hello and welcome to my studio. In this video I'm going to show you how I made this picture. You don't always need your set straight on. Sometimes it's better to introduce angles and leading lines into the composition. Also, by using a smaller depth of field, you can add more emphasis to the main part of the subject. And in this video I'm going to show you exactly how I did it. Okay, so this is what I've got set up so far. I've got a table here, which is actually on wheels. I'll come to that in a moment. At the front there, I've also set up a tripod. So on the table here, I'm just going to build up my set. So I'm going to start by just placing an old piece of slate just on the front of the table here, something like that. And I've also got a piece of Hessian here. So I'm just going to place this on the front here, something like that. There we are. And now I'm just going to place a couple of blocks just to rise up a piece of wood, which I'm going to use as a linear element to the set. There we are. This piece of wood's got some nice texture to it. It's been quite well weathered. Okay, so that's the basic set. So the next thing I'm going to do is just rotate the whole table so that it's at a bit better of an angle for taking pictures with. So I'm just going to turn this round like so. There we are. That's why this table is on wheels. It makes it easier to do that sort of thing. So from this point of view where the camera will be, everything is now at a bit of an angle, which is what I want. Okay, so for the subject then, I'm going to use some pasta. So here I have some linguine, and I've just put some twine around the centre here, just to hold it together. So I'm just going to place this on here and just spin that out slightly so it'll stand up on its own. There we are. And I'm also just going to add a bit more pasta down here, just in a glass jar. There we are. Just get some out. I'm just going to arrange this so that it forms a bit of a lead in to where the jar will be. Might need to arrange that a bit better as the picture goes on, but you get the idea. Something like that. Okay, so that's it really for the set. Next thing to do would be to set up the camera. So I'm using a medium format camera which is tethered into Capture One software, so it's easy to show the results as I get them. Now on the front of this I have an 80mm lens. Now that's about the same sort of field of view as you can expect with a 50mm lens on a full frame format camera. Okay, so we'll just pop this on the tripod at the front here. And I'll just line up the shot. So the first thing I want to do is just focus that. So I think that should be about there. And I just want to make sure that all the elements are actually in the image, which I think they are. I think that's okay for now. Okay, so with that done, next thing to do would be to turn the camera on. And now I can show you the settings that I have on the camera at the moment on the software here. So it's in full manual mode. I'm using a shutter speed of 125th of a second, which is the flash sync speed for that camera, 100 ISO, and at the moment I've got an aperture set of f8. That's about half the range on this particular lens. It's a good starting point. So just with those settings and no flash set yet, I'll just grab an image just to make sure that I don't get too much contamination from the house lights. And there we are. You can see that there is a very slight ghost of an image there, but nothing too serious. So at those settings, I think that would be safe enough. Okay, so the next thing to do will be to set a flash. Here we are, so I'm going to use this battery-powered 500 dual studio flash, which has a 1 foot by 4 foot softbox on the front of it. So for an initial exposure, what I'm going to do is just use the TTL metering in the camera just to set a ballpark. Okay, so to do that, I can do that from the camera controls, since the flash sync trigger is built into this camera. So I'll just bring up the flash sync, select that light, and put it into TTL. There we go. And with that, I'll just grab an image and we'll see what we get. Okay, so we can see from that the auto exposure is in the right ballpark. It's maybe a little bright, it probably needs some taking off it. But for now, that will probably do. Okay, so what I'll do now is take it out of TTL, because I don't need that anymore, and it'll give me full control over the light. So once again, bring up the flash control and just put it back into manual. There we go. Right, so having done that, the next thing to do will be to sort out a background. Now for the background, I'm just going to use a piece of mount board just on a C-stand. But to get it in the right place, what I'm going to do is just use the live view on the camera. So I'll just start that up. There we are, I'll make that a bit bigger. There we go. So with that active, what I can do now is just set the background in the right place. So here we are. As I mentioned, this is a piece of mount board on a C-stand. I'm just going to place this at the back here, something like that. Now having the image on the monitor is very handy, because it can just show me that I've got everything in the right place straight away. There we are, something like that anyway. Okay, so with that set, I can take it out of live view and we'll just grab a test and see what it looks like. There, so we can see that in this image, the background is maybe a little bright, it's a bit overlit, and also the subject, as we mentioned before, is a bit bright too. So I think I'd just like to take maybe 1.5 stops off, something like that. And it also needs to be feathered slightly, I think, just to take the sheen off the background here. So I'll feather it first. So by feathering, I just mean moving the light slightly away from the background, like so. If I just point it about there, we'll see what that looks like. And we'll just use the flash trigger on the camera here just to take 1.5 stops of energy out of the system. So again, that light is selected. There's 1 stop and 1/2. That's it. So with that change made, I'll just grab that again and we'll see what it looks like now. Okay, so that's immediately quite a lot better than it was before. We've got some very nice tone in here now, and we've got some nice graduation going on over in the background here. So this is what we had before, all a bit overlit, and this is what we've got now. Okay, so I can see in here that there's a couple of things compositionally that I'd like to change. One is I have the small block showing that's holding up this piece of wood at the back here, and I think this is a little untidy. I think there's too many pieces of pasta in that part. So what I'm going to do is just move some of those and just rearrange that a little. There we are. So I've also just moved this a little bit further forwards as well. We'll just see what that looks like. Yes, I think that's considerably better. So this is forming a bit more of a leading line, and with this being moved over now, it's also covering up the block which is holding up the wood. Okay, so far so good. But the overall depth of field is, I think, a little large. So what I'm going to do is alter the aperture to give me a smaller depth of field. So from f8, I'm going to change that to f4. But one of the consequences of doing that is that I will now get quite a lot more contamination from the house lights. So if I just temporarily disable the flash and just grab an image, I can show you what we'll get. And there you can see that there is quite a lot of contamination going on here. So ordinarily you would probably turn the house lights down or turn them out completely. But I have another solution on this particular camera because I have the use of a leaf shutter in the lens. So instead of using the focal plane shutter at the back of the camera, I can use the leaf shutter, which will allow me to synchronize with flash at any particular speed I like. So what I'm going to do is just use the software here just to set that up. So I'll go for leaf shutter priority, and I'll change this to 1600. Now that's the fastest sync speed for the leaf shutter in the lens. Okay, so with those parameters now set, I'll grab that again. And there we are, you can see that the image has disappeared completely. Okay, so with that exercise out of the way, it just remains to start up the flash again, but this time I'll take off 2 stops of energy to compensate for opening up the aperture on the lens. And we'll just grab that again. There we are. That seems to have worked quite well. So this is what we had before, and this is what I've got now. So I've got a nice lead through into an out of focus background, which I quite like. Okay, so the next thing that I want to address is just to fill in this side of the pasta here a little. It's a little dark, a bit contrasty. So to do that, I'm just going to use this card flag, which is just a piece of card, and I've just clamped that to a piece of wood so it'll stand up on its own. I'm just going to put this in here just to recycle some of the light. Now I want to make sure that it's actually not in the field of view, so I'll just check that quickly in the viewfinder. Yeah, that seems to be okay. It might need adjusting, we'll see how we go. Yes, that seems to have worked. It's just filled in this part of the pasta here. If I go to the previous image, this is what it was like before, and this is what it's like now. It's a small change, but it just adds to the overall look of the image, which I think is pretty good. Okay, so for capturing the image, that's it. The next thing to do would be just to go into Photoshop and do the bare minimum of post-production. Okay, so here we are in Photoshop, and I've loaded up the file of the image that I captured earlier. So the first thing to do would just be to make a copy of this. So I tend to do this by just going onto the background layer here, right-click the mouse, ask for a duplicate layer, but ask for a new document. I will just call this pasta. There we go. So with that now done, I can shut down the camera original. I've always got that to go back to. This is what I will be editing. Now as this stands at the moment, there is very little to do to this, I think. So what I'm going to do to start with is just add a crop. So I'm going to be using this for video, so I have a specific ratio of 16:9. And I'm basically just going to tighten up the image a little and just move it over slightly like so. Yeah, I think that works quite well. I'll just click on OK. There we are. That's made quite a nice composition. I think possibly this part is a little bright. I'd just like to tone that down ever so slightly. So what I'm going to do is add an adjustment layer. And the adjustment layer that I'll add is just an exposure, like so. So as the mask on the adjustment layer is blank at the moment, this will affect the whole image. So I'll just take that down a little bit in terms of exposure, and I'll just alter the offset just to match that. There we are. Tiny bit of gamma correction there. But obviously I don't want it to affect the whole of the image. I just want it to affect this bit here. So the first thing I'm going to do is just invert that mask. So I'll just go to the mask control here and just click on invert, and you can see now that the mask has turned black. So anywhere that I paint in white on this mask will bring that effect through. So this is the bit that I'm bothered about. So I'll just make sure that I've got white selected as the foreground colour. Go to a paintbrush. And we'll just check the parameters on that. Yeah, that doesn't look too bad. And I'll just paint that through. There we are. And it just takes it down. Now I've got this set so that I'm just changing this ever so slightly each time. I have an opacity of 22%. So it just allows me that little bit of extra control. So that's with the effect, and that's without it. There we are. So there we have it. By adding some angles to the set, I've changed the composition of what could have been a very plain picture into something a little more interesting. And together with limiting the depth of field, I've brought the emphasis back onto the main part of the subject. And I think overall, that's worked rather well. Okay, well I hope you liked watching how I made that image, and if you like watching these sort of things, do click on the other images as they appear, and don't forget to subscribe. Oh, and hit the like button. Thank you very much for watching.